I read this statement. This is the quote. The barrier to making 10K per month isn't skill. It's effort and it's know-how. Okay. Unpack that for us, James.
It's time to reinvent.
Welcome to the Lessons of Entrepreneurship, the journey of reinvention. As always, I have an exciting guest for you here, James Lincoln. James is the CEO of Goodly. James, please introduce yourself to us and let us know what your mission is.
I'm James Lincoln. I'm living in Utah. Just finished up an MBA program, and I've been running a digital agency at Goodly for the last 15 months or so. I've dabbled in a lot of different entrepreneurial ventures. I worked for large nonprofit healthcare, like top 10 largest systems. And now I'm just in the thick of it as an agency owner. My mission is to make growth accessible to small business owners.
That's awesome. Dabbled in a lot of things, which a lot of the listeners get this, or they're in the middle of dabbling in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And something clicks or things clicked in this one or the one before. Just give us an idea.
I just finished up a master's degree, an MBA. I'm now at this point, almost 6 years removed, I guess 5 years removed from my undergrad. And when I came out of that, I started a little micro SaaS company working with small businesses. And I would say that wasn't successful. If I was to pit it up against the dreams I had for it, it wasn't a success, but it was really successful in that it set me up to be able to do what I'm doing today. From a foundation standpoint, running a business, learning, and that's exactly what I wanted coming out of school. I had a psych degree and I wasn't going to be able to go get like a killer job, right? I'm like, I can go be like a SDR and make cold calls, or I can just go start my own business. And I went with the latter. And in between, I say it wasn't a success because I ended up going and getting a job and working full time in Texas. My wife got pregnant and we needed a job and some really steady income and health insurance. And so I worked down there for 3 years doing software management at a health system.
It's so important because sometimes as entrepreneurs, maybe you've tried something, you're in the middle of trying something and you really don't see it working. And you're like, maybe this isn't meant for me, or there's something that I'm just not getting that everyone else is getting. I always love when the guests to share that part of the journey as well.
It is hard when you feel like you're failing. And what I've learned is you just got to stay in the game as long as you can, because everything you're doing is a learning opportunity. And if you can stay in the game and give yourself enough swings at the ball, odds are something will click and you'll find something that works for you.
Thank you for that. Now, I read this statement. This is the quote. The barrier to making 10K per month isn't skill. It's effort and it's know-how. Okay. So unpack that for us, James.
10K a month is like a staple, right? People are like, okay, how can I make 10K a month, like 120 grand? If you're running a business, like we're talking gross, if you're doing 120K gross a year, odds are you're doing most of the work, you're an owner operator, and you're probably going to take home a good chunk of that money. That's like a good standard to be like, okay, I can quit my job. If I'm doing a side hustle, I can quit my job when I'm at 10K a month. People like mystify that number and they think, man, I don't know how to do this. I can't get there. I don't have the skill set I need. Whether I'm starting a digital agency, or maybe I'm going to go clean windows or mow lawns or whatever it is, they think I don't have the skill set to go sell people. And this is what it comes down to. It's you have to be able to sell and you have to be able to deliver. If it's a product, you're selling the product and you have to get that product to them and have it be high quality enough. If it's a service, it's the same thing. You got to be able to sell it and you have to be able to deliver on the value they're paying you. People worry, man, that's a skill I don't have. I don't have either of those things. In reality, all that it takes is some effort, right? Because like selling's not hard. And delivering doesn't have to be hard. And that's where the know-how comes in. The effort is on the sales side. You can get in front of customers. Everybody, if you scroll through your phone, pick whatever you want to offer as a service or a business. You have customers in your contact list. Alex Hormozi harps on this over and over again. It's almost annoying how much you hear it, but it's so true. There are people that trust you because you have a relationship with them that would be willing to pay you money for whatever service you want to provide. And then outside of that, with social media nowadays, you can get in front of buyers. You can cold DM people and get in front of buyers easily. That's the effort part. You have to put the time in to do that. The know-how comes in when you're talking about how you deliver whatever you're offering. And that's if you know how to hire offshore or outsource or white label, or there's so many little weird things you would never know that are so nuanced that I've learned over years. And that's where that first business was so helpful. I learned how to white label software. I learned how to hire in the Philippines. And those two things were like the core foundations for starting my agency. And when you know how to do that stuff on the back end, all it comes down to is the effort it takes. You don't have to have any skill in what you're actually delivering. You'll develop that skill over time.
That's so important. When I read that, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And people are really going to want to hear what this is about. James, you mentioned two terms. You talked about white labeling, and then you talked about hiring offshore. Let's start with the white labeling. What is it? And you can tell us your experience with that.
White labeling is essentially just putting your brand on something else, right? It's actually pretty common in like clothing or supplements. If you go buy a vitamin D supplement, odds are everybody that sells vitamin D supplements is like getting their vitamin D from probably 3 suppliers in the world, and they're just slapping a label on it. And now it's just become a branding company. So that's white labeling, putting your brand on something that somebody else is manufacturing. Where it's a little more complicated and people don't quite understand it as much is there's the software side. So you can white label software, and I could just go resell software and make it look like my own software. Or I could white label services, right? So I could go partner with a tax firm and say, hey, I want to sell your services under my own brand. But you're just going to do all the delivery, right? I'm going to mark it up. Now you're just playing a markup game. So you don't want to be in the white label game forever because you're not actually creating any value in your company because you don't have anything inherent in the company like delivering the services. But it's a great way to get started because you're just putting like a 30% markup on something and you're selling it. So that's white labeling. And there's a lot of ways to get into it. I would argue that going on to Fiverr or what's the other one? Upwork, and just paying somebody, let's say you want to build websites for people, paying somebody on Fiverr to build websites and you go sell them. That is essentially white labeling. You know what I mean? You just have to be sure that the quality of work you're getting from the white labeled service is high enough to meet what you're selling.
That's so good because it allows you to focus on one aspect rather than starting out and you're thinking about creating a product, you're thinking about marketing the product, you're thinking about the delivery of the product, especially when you're just starting out and you're trying to hone in on getting confident in doing one thing and getting success with that and then doing the next thing. It's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. And then you talked about hiring offshore. It's just so interesting because a lot of people, if you read the 4-Hour Workweek, you have an idea, but still, how actually do you do it? Conceptually, you can think about it, but I'm glad I have you here to speak about it. First, probably tell us what is offshore hiring, and then how would someone hire offshore from your experience?
So offshore hiring, it's actually like an ambiguous term because like technically the US is offshore for any other country in the world. But sitting here in the US, we use the term offshore really often. It's basically just hiring out of country for roles that normally would be in country and building your company with international talent. I've hired now out of Mexico, the Philippines, Pakistan, and India. Like those are the countries that I've hired out of. A lot of people hire out of South America, South Africa, really popular. And you'll find that different regions of the world are well suited for different roles. It's been like an absolute cheat code in my business. I mean, you get phenomenal talent. I think one of the most important things I always tell people is you're not outsourcing. Because again, when you outsource, you're taking what you want to provide and moving it out of your company. This is actually like hiring and bringing people in. They may be contractors or technically freelancers, but it's on you to build the culture of you're part of our team. You're a long-term member of the team here, and we have growth goals and we want you to be a part of them. And when you do that, now you're building like inherently in the business, you're building talent. When you have talent in your business, you're multiplying, again, back to the 4-Hour Workweek, you're multiplying what you can do. You have a limited amount of time in the day. When you can go hire somebody and you can hire offshore, like the benefits of offshore is you can typically do it far sooner than you could in the US. There's a lot of tax burden, everything in hiring in the US. I have employees in the US and it's a huge complicated mess. It's very hard with like red tape to get it set up, but offshore, it's easy to do that early on. I guess your second question was how to do it.
Because someone may be thinking, I want to hire my first person. I think that's the critical point where you're not really sure how to hire someone, and then you want to hire someone offshore, and this is your first, whether it's a contractor or someone to help you out to free up time. What do you suggest someone in that situation?
So there's two approaches. There's do it yourself and there's done for you. Done for you, you've got all kinds of firms out there that will recruit talent for you, like staffing agencies will recruit international talent and place them for a fee. Often it's a percentage of the first year salary, or it could be just a flat rate. So you could always go that route. If you have capital and you want to hire quickly and make sure you get it right, go with one of those companies, right? There's some like Pavago is phenomenal. Somewhere, I guess, was rebranded from Shepherd. They're solid, Hire LATAM. There's a lot of companies out there. On the do-it-yourself side, it's just a question of how do you get in front of the people in those other countries. So I hire out of the Philippines, and that's where I built my company for the first year. And I used onlinejobs.ph, right? It's a website. It's essentially a job board in the Philippines. When you're hiring yourself, you have to understand that you'll probably get it wrong, right? And just because you hired the wrong person doesn't mean international talent doesn't work. It works. I'll stand here today and tell you it works. But I've hired a lot of people, and I've had to go through people because some people are unreliable. Some people just can't do the work. Some people quit on you. You have to be willing to just move quickly through people and give people a shot. And if they're not reliable early on, move on and go find someone else, and always have that pipeline built so that you can be reaching out to new people to bring into your company. Again, if you have the capital, actually this month was the first time I've gone through some recruiting agencies. I've had a great experience. If you have the capital, I'd recommend that. If you don't, there's nothing wrong with the do-it-yourself model. Just be prepared to get some bruises as you learn.
Thank you for that. Now, I want to bring us to the focus of today's conversation, which is how you created your digital agency. Now, probably you need to define for us what you term digital and what is covered under digital agency, because I think people have a lot of ideas about that may not be or may be true. We'll start with what you're doing right now and how you got started in that.
So digital agency, my agency specifically, we do local SEO. We help local businesses get found on Google organically. We don't do paid ads. We solely focus on organic. We'll do web development, and then we do like the local SEO for them. Niching down has been really critical. It's allowed us to get really good at one thing. How I got started is, I'll keep it brief. I came out to Utah to do an MBA. The goal in coming out to do an MBA was actually to go buy a business. There's a lot of business acquisition buzz, and I caught hold of it and was just like enamored and thought, I'm going to go buy a business and I'll get an SBA loan and run that acquisition route. Then my first semester, I had a business under contract and it fell through. It left me thinking like, man, I could have pulled that off, but I'm not as financially prepared to go buy a business as I'd like to be. I figured I've got 18 months left, or 12, 15 months left in my program, and a summertime where I'd normally do an internship. Rather than searching for a business, I'm going to build a business with cash flow. One, it'll allow me to have the capital I want to go buy businesses. And two, it'll allow me to search indefinitely. From that micro SaaS company I'd started, we were serving a small business market. I knew how to reach these customers. I knew some fundamentals of SEO, but not a lot, right? Like enough that you could get it on a YouTube video and you could be at the same place I was. And I just started, right? It was February of 2023. I sat down and was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it all summer. Funny enough, was working full time. So I took a job so that I could get some financing I needed for the business that I was going to buy. And then the business fell through and I didn't want to leave the job. Like, it was a great job, but I thought, I'm going to do my MBA. I'm going to do this full-time job and I'm going to build this agency. And that's what I did. I hired a cold caller so that I didn't have to make cold calls because I didn't have time. I was too busy with all the other stuff on my plate. And for 4 months, February to June, I just followed up with leads from my cold caller and closed deals. And June came around and I hired an account executive because, again, I'm like, I have to optimize for time. I'm still working a full-time job. I'm still doing an MBA. I don't have time to sit here and sell for 6 hours a day. You have to sell during business hours. That's one of the hard things about a side hustle where you're selling is you have to sell during business hours. My job was flexible enough that I could hop on a call here and there, but I was like, I need to get an account executive in. I took all of the cash that I was making. I paid an account executive, 2 account executives, and one didn't pan out. And we've just grown from there. And I've built a team up around me. I finished my MBA last month. And now for the first time, full-time in my agency. I left that job in September of 2023. So I was there for 6 months. And then we were making enough through my agency to keep afloat. And now it's great. I'm full-time. We've got 10 employees and are scaling up right now to probably 16 and making a pretty heavy push for significant growth over the next 8 months.
It's amazing. That's really quick, especially from start to, okay, the business is making enough cash flow that I'm confident that I can walk away from a full-time job. You don't like cold calling. I think everyone who heard that will be like, oh God, who does? We don't like cold calling at all. It's great that you found someone to do that for you. Now, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. The key to why you think you got that success so quickly? Because I think you might have people who are listening who've bought packages about start a digital agency and you see it online, they bought so-and-so's digital agent package and they think, oh, this doesn't work or it's too saturated or everyone is doing it or what will I do different? Maybe you can speak just why you think you got that success so quickly.
Why do I think I got the success so quickly? Before I get into that, let me address two things you said, right? The first is about courses. I was part of a course. Frankly, I got it for free, right? It was like a buddy of mine that was like, hey, I'm building this course. Come check it out. And so I dabbled with that and looked at it a little bit. But courses don't work because people don't put the effort in. They expect the course to be the magic pill. They think, oh, I'll go spend $2,000 on a course and I'll be successful. And that's never the case. The course gives you the knowledge faster than you would otherwise have it. But if you aren't committed, the risk with courses is not the courses don't work, it's commitment risk. And I've found that to be the case time and time again. I've paid for other courses that I haven't been committed to and I lost money. It wasn't the course's fault. It was my fault because I actually wasn't that committed to it. And you get hyped up in the sales process and are like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'll make a bunch of money. And you think the course is magic pill. It's not. It's always going to be work. The second part, which is actually more critical I want to talk to, is saturation. People will tell you left and right that digital agencies are saturated. They'll tell you that Amazon businesses are saturated. Everybody tells you everything is saturated. But you think you're going to go find this like one random thing that's going to make you millions of dollars and nobody's doing it yet? Nobody's that smart. And what I found, yes, digital agencies are very saturated. But do you know how many small businesses there are in America? I have 120, I don't even looked, right? Like for somewhere between 115 and 130 customers. And it's literally life-changing money. And that's nothing in terms of the size of the market. You wouldn't even measure me in terms of market share. You could say it's really saturated, but there are people out there that are willing to give you some money. And again, to get to 10K, maybe you only have to go get 20 customers. And it doesn't matter how saturated any market is, you can get 20 customers. That's my take on saturation. It's just a way of demotivating people to do something. What helped me be successful quickly? I mean, again, the work. And frankly, I paid people to do the work because I didn't have the time to do all the work. I still put a lot of work in. Don't get me wrong. I'd be up till 2 a.m. building websites and putting branding stuff together and whatever. There's always stuff you're doing. Still to this day, I'm spending a ton of time working, but technically I'm not working in the business. There's always stuff to do. So I put the work in and I had other people putting the work in and I got really good at reaching customers. I found a good niche, which was local service businesses. And I found a really good way to reach them. And that way was cold calling. And since then, we've diversified our sales methods a little bit and we get higher tier customers because we've diversified and are reaching people that we wouldn't have reached cold calling. But it was a killer way to start and it got me to where I am today. You just have to put the work in and you got to find some angle to be able to get in front of people. It's just selling. Again, it's just being able to sell.
To take you back to what you said about the courses, you're so right, because part of the marketing is showing you that, of course, you will get all the information that someone learned over a long period of time and have it compressed. So you have all the information, but still, it's a lot of work and people won't be ready for what it takes to get to the success. Plus, also, I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes you get the information laid out for you and you're not ready for it because you haven't walked the journey. And so it doesn't click because you've been told everything, but because you're not far enough in the journey for you to understand how things should go, it still doesn't quite work. I'm going to take you back to what you said about hiring and having people doing the things that free up your time. When you're working with offshore, I often hear people saying that sometimes language, and I hear people talking about best practices of working with people from various countries to make sure that maybe the way people say it in the Philippines and the way someone would say the same thing in the US. Even when you're talking to someone, you're like, what did they just say? And they're like, what did you just say? You somehow things are not clicking. How to overcome those kind of things when you're working with an offshore team?
I haven't had a ton of those barriers because I don't hire the people I can't communicate with. I've got two different types of hires. I've got hires that talk to customers and I've got hires that do back-end work. They don't talk to customers. I don't care how someone who doesn't talk to customers sounds, right? Like their accent could be thick. It doesn't matter to me, but I still have to be able to communicate with them. So I'm getting on interviews with people. And if I feel like we can't communicate back and forth effectively, just having a conversation like you and I are, then it's probably a no-go because there's going to be a lot lost in translation. One of the advantages to the Philippines is that English is actually one of their official languages. Most people in the Philippines speak English. Now, some speak it significantly better than others. And I've got cold callers. You'd have a hard time telling they weren't sitting at a desk in Florida making calls just because their English is so good and their accent is non-existent. And then I've got members of my team that have thicker accents, and it doesn't matter because they're not talking to customers and they still can communicate with me. So I think what you're saying is a really important thing to consider, right? You need to be sure you can communicate with employees. Because if you can't, you'll be frustrated. You'll think it doesn't work. And there are people out there that can't communicate with you. You just have to find them.
That's good information. Because sometimes people think, oh, I can't do offshore because obviously people have ideas about what it's like to work with people from other countries. So it's great that you speak to that. Now, I'm bouncing about here. But there's so many good things that come up and I'm like, okay, before we forget that one, let's talk about this. Creating a digital agency as a side hustle. Maybe you can speak to the business model. People may be thinking, it's great that you spoke about everybody has somebody that they know, someone that you could serve. So you can get your first clients for you to just start working. But then you're thinking about, okay, how am I structuring this business?
The business model, when you're thinking about it as a side hustle, I think I can speak really well to that, right? Because when you're building it as a side hustle, you're inherently going to be limited in time. So you don't have to think about big business. Like, how do I make this a full-time thing? How do I scale to be full-time? As a side hustle, it starts out with, what's your offer? Pick out, what am I going to offer to somebody? And if it's a digital agency, there's a lot of digital agencies. There's web development, there's SEO, there's paid ads, there's email marketing, lead gen, social media marketing. There's all kinds of digital agencies. You don't want to be a full service agency. I can tell you that. I've tried it. And everybody that's tried it says, don't do it. I will confirm, don't do it. Things get much simpler when you niche down into one service. So you pick your service, you pick your offering, and then you just go out and you sell, right? So that's it. You've built the landing page and you've got a domain and an email, and you're just going to go sell. And maybe you hire a cold caller, maybe you just reach out to people. It depends on what kind of money you want to put in. But you could start, like I started my business with $2,000 and I don't think I ever used it. I used a little bit of it, but we were always making money. In month one, we closed the deal. Come up with your offer, and then you go out and sell it. And then you hire to do the delivery. That's it. That's the model. And then you just repeat. You don't have to go back to offer, but you go back to sell, right? You sell, and then you hire for delivery. And then the last step would just be scaling. And you can scale at whatever pace you want to. So if you're like, hey, I'm closing $2,000 of monthly recurring revenue a month, and I'm fine with that, right? By the end of the year, it'll be like 24K a monthly recurring revenue. Most digital agencies, your margin is going to be between 50 and 70%. You're taking a good chunk of money home every month. Like, if that's the pace you want to scale, great. If you want to increase the rate at which you're scaling, then you just reinvest money and hire more people to do the cold calling and to do the outreach and to do the delivery and all of it. You scale that model of sell and then hire for delivery. I don't think you should ever do delivery. I just don't. Like, people have skill sets, right? My skill set isn't local SEO. At this point, I've learned a ton about it and I could go do it, but I'm not going to do it because I can pay somebody to do it for far less than what I could do, which is go out and build systems in my business to help it grow. So I just don't think you should ever do delivery. You'll do customer service and you'll do onboarding and whatnot until you hire that out. You can find people that are experts in anything, whether it's paid ads or email marketing or anything. You can find experts. So let the experts do their thing they're great at, and you do the thing that you're going to be great at, which is founder-led sales. Like, founder-led sales are far easier than hiring salespeople. It's just easier. You're the person, and people like buying from other business owners.
It's such a refreshing take. And I think it's contrary to the way a lot of people do it, where you try to get the skill and then you try to do the work. And then all of a sudden you've got all these hats moving. You're trying to sell, you're trying to create leads, you're trying to deliver, and nothing is moving. And money's going out the door every day.
It applies everywhere, right? It's just a different framework for business. And I think that venture-backed SaaS has led people to believe you need to build something and then you need to sell it. And look at venture-backed SaaS right now. Nobody makes money, right? They're like these unprofitable businesses because they're just putting all their money into growth. If a business doesn't make any money, what's it worth? I guess you could say worth millions and millions, but like the odds of doing that are small. And I'm a cash flow business, man. That's what I do. So if I was to go start a roofing company today, I would be selling roofing. I'd put a website up and I would go out and I'd put some door hangers up and I'd say, hey, we're here, we're redoing roofs. And if I got a job, I would call the roofing contractor down the street and say, hey, I've got a job. Can you go quote it? You'll do the work and I'm giving you this lead. And I'd take maybe a 10% markup. And I would do enough of those till I had enough cash flow to go hire my own crew. And now I'm going to get the full gross margin because I've got the team in-house to do it. And when you follow that model, like again, white labeling, you follow that model of sell, hire, scale, you'll never burn money. You just won't. Like I burned money for 3 months at my agency and it was because I had to hire a salesperson faster than I thought I did because I didn't have the time. Now we don't burn money. We could have been profitable from month 1, but we were profitable from month 3 and barely unprofitable in month 2.
Can you say cash flow? Okay, that's so good. James, thank you so much. I love if you could just speak to this. What has faith meant to you in your journey and where you're coming from? Because our audience is Christian entrepreneurs and I understand you're a Christian entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, I am. And I think that faith for me, like how I exercise my faith, just like anybody else, it varies from day to day. Some days I'm better and some days I'm worse. Some days I read scriptures and some days I say prayers and other days I fall short. And I think we all fall short. But it means so much to me. It's literally the driving force behind everything I do. Is I know I have a family and I have a wife and I believe in Christ and I believe that I can be together with my family forever. And that's the most important thing in the world to me is my family. And it's what's brought me to where I am today is I want to be able to show up the best for my family. And I know that I show up the best when I'm doing what I love to do. And when I have the freedom of time to be able to be there for my family the way I want to be. And I'm not bogged down by a PTO policy or a go live that's going to keep me up all night because we got some stuff going on. And you'll have that in your business, but you're in control. And it's just, again, it's my faith that I got married when I was 22 and we have 2 little girls and there's nothing more important to me than my family and my faith. It just drives me forward every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. To the audience, please, to learn more about what James is doing. James, where can they follow you?
I'm probably most active on Twitter. It's just _James Lincoln. You can find me on any social platform, but I'm most active on Twitter and always happy to talk to people about how to get started. The last thing I'll say is it doesn't take a lot to get that taste of I can do this. And if you believe in yourself and you put yourself in a position to make a little bit of money, the sky's the limit. You don't have to build a business that's worth tens of millions of dollars to be an entrepreneur. You can build a business that gets you off the ground and gives you opportunity to build more in a different way. And your eyes will be open and you'll learn and you'll see other opportunities to continue building bigger and bigger. I don't think there's really too much of a barrier to entry. You just got to get after it.
Yeah. Thank you for that message. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you.